So I want to just talk a little bit. I made some notes, and the title I put on this is Always Beginning. And I'll refer back to a piece of writing. It's probably only 600 or 800 words from Eihei Dogen Zenji from the 13th century. So bear with me if you will. Houghton will relate to some of this. Any other musicians here? When I was in grade school, I took piano lessons from the Sisters of the Holy Name. And this was in the early 60s when the world was black and white. Everything was a little dark. We hadn't gotten color yet. And they had a piano studio in the basement of their convent, which was next to the parochial school that I went to. And I was terrified. It felt medieval to me. It was like a dungeon. It was like going into the dungeon, because you go down and it was dark, and then there's rooms off to here, and I go, what are are there any little Catholic children that never come back? But we all survived that. The nuns were great music teachers, but they were super strict. And it was classical music, and it was by the book. And if you'll forgive the comparison, as I recall, they had a Kyosaku. And if you don't know the Kyosaku in Zen practice, probably a little more in Rinzai, but in our practice too, it's called the awakening stick. And we don't use it much in our Zen center, but some Zen centers use it quite liberally, and it's whack, whack. So I recall the nuns having, in my memory, a Kyosaku, but it was 12 inches long, and it had inch markings along it, and had a metal edge. And they'd use this ruler, this Kyosaku, and whack the back of your hands if, when you're playing the piano, you weren't up in proper position like this. The prescribed arch and angle of your hands had to be just so. Not letting them droop down like Professor Longhair or Thelonious Monk, who both played kind of like this, even though Thelonious Monk, I think, was classically trained. The good Sisters of the Holy Name thought of those guys, if they thought of them at all, as piano barbarians, I'm sure. Whack! Move your hands back up into a nice arch, Jeffrey. Whack! I still remember that. Form was important. That form was important. Later, I took classical guitar lessons, and in classical guitar, form again is important. Not, perhaps somebody else here who's taken classical guitar might be able to correct me, but I remember, sit up very straight, a specific kind of a chair. You had a little stool that I would put my left foot on, and the guitar is held just so at an angle. And my teacher was always admonishing me to get my chording hand around, get your hand around there, so you can finger properly, and your attack hand is just so. There was no Kyosaku with the classical guitar teacher. But they didn't want us playing like those Philistines, Buddy Guy or Keith Richards. So those are really my first Rinzai exposures. Again, form was important. In both those cases, it was intended to facilitate the best performance in the most efficient way. But somehow, as a young music student, I knew, and we all knew, that you'd internalize that stuff, and pretty soon you'd forget about it, and it'd just become kind of second nature. You wouldn't dwell on it. You certainly wouldn't go back to it again much, other than playing scales for the rest of your life. When we come to Zazen, we learn the form for how to sit. And it's very, very specific. But there's an intimate difference between this specificity of form with Zazen and the other examples I gave. In Zen, we never move, quote unquote, beyond this form in our practice. We never graduate. This form indeed is our practice. Taking this posture and sitting in a specific way, it's literally our realization and the expression of our true nature. And we embody that when we sit. In most things that we do, where there are basics to be learned, we move on to level 2, we move on to level 3, we check those boxes, we become an apprentice or a journeyman or an adept. And we rarely go back and repeat those basics. It's unusual to do that. So, Eihei Dogen wrote on Zazengi in 1227. He was 28 years old. And he wrote it before he wrote the Shobogenzo, which is considered one of the philosophical or religious classics of the world. One translation of this piece is the universal promotion of the principles of Zazen. That's rather stiff. In the first Zen lineage I was involved in, they translated it as Zazen rules, which is also kind of stiff, kind of stilted. Maizumi Roshi, the founder of this lineage, my lineage, saw this piece of instruction as being so important that he included it. I want to draw my phone. In this book in 1977. And by the way, there are 2 of these, on Zen Practice and on Zen Practice 2, that he and Bernie Glassman wrote. They're extraordinary. For the most part, I think they're out of print, but they made a compendium of two books or 3 books, and it's called On Zen Practice. Highly recommend it. It's really, really good. But he saw it so important to put this piece about the fundamental way of taking this posture and sitting Zazen that he included it in this book. Not only did he do that, he wrote himself 37 pages to follow about this 800-word or so instruction. And it made me wonder why so many words about the first, very most basic thing that we do in our practice. Why is it that important? In that first lineage I joined back in the 70s, we chanted this every day. I always wondered why. It's really fundamental. Put your legs this particular way. You know, rest your eyes a certain way. Put your hands a certain way. Ears over shoulders. Why did we remind ourselves of that every day? When do we get to move past this? The thought in my head was, yeah, sure, I got it. I know, what's next? Can we move on? I think we also chanted it at ZCLA in the 70s and 80s too, but I don't remember. Some things came up for me when we did that at the time, like when do I get to not be a beginner anymore? You and I traded an email about beginning. I don't know if you remember what I said to you. Or, that senior woman who's been doing this for 20 years before me, she's still chanting this. Doesn't she get it? It's not that hard. It's the simplest thing in the world. So about a month ago, I was feeling a bodily sensation of depression and hopelessness and anxiety, and I found my body resisting taking this form so precisely, resisting sitting utterly still. It's almost like my body was screaming, "No! You can't make me." And in that moment, I got and I understood the primacy and the importance of this Zazen form. I felt it. It's a mirror to who I think I am. And who I think I am is not who I am. It's just a bag full of ideas. So I gently nudged myself to do this anyway. Gently, not forcefully. So I carefully crossed my legs, just so. Checked that I was sitting up straight. Rocked back and forth. Hands in cosmic mudra. Eyes looking out about 3 feet. Breathing from the hara. And I felt this gut level resistance. I really wanted to just droop or slouch or put my hands wherever I wanted to. I actually wanted to turn off the Zoom. It was in a group setting. Turn off the Zoom and go watch TV. I didn't want to do this. But I stuck with it, and it was very, very uncomfortable. And this is not the first time this has happened. To be perfectly honest, in the course of 40 years, this has happened probably 1,000 times. And perhaps everybody here has experienced this. I'm sure you have. But my resistance and discomfort dissipated. And I settled into an hour of grounded sitting. And that was a reminder for me how constantly essential this form is. It's like that metaphor we use sometimes of a snake slithering through the grass, not really being able to really sense what its body feels like until you put the snake inside a bamboo tube and there's nowhere to go. That's this form. It's a mirror. This form is our true nature. Without any thoughts, definitely without any meaning. We're expressing our Buddhahood when we take this form, when we do this. And we are indeed beginners. Every moment, every breath, every day. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let me just, there's just a page worth here in the middle. And again, it's really not that long. And this is after he's sort of set this up a little bit. You should therefore cease from practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing words and following after speech, and learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate yourself. Body and mind of themselves will drop away, and your original face will be manifest. If you want to attain suchness, you should practice suchness without delay. He uses the word sanzen, but I'll change it. For zazen, a quiet room is suitable. Eat and drink moderately. Cast aside all involvements and cease all affairs. Do not think good or bad. Do not administer pros and cons. Cease all the movements of the conscious mind, the gauging of all thoughts and views. Have no designs on becoming a Buddha. Zazen has nothing whatever to do with sitting or lying down. At the sight of your regular, and by the way, this is a translation by Norman Waddell and Avi Masal. At the site of your regular sitting, spread out thick matting and place a cushion above it, kind of like this. Sit either in the full lotus or half lotus position. In the full lotus position, you first place your right foot on your left thigh and then your left foot on your right thigh. In the half lotus, you simply press your left foot against your right thigh. You should have your robes and belt loosely bound and arranged in order. Then place your right hand on your left leg and your left palm facing upwards on your right palm. Thumb tips touching. Thus sit upright in correct bodily posture, neither inclining to the left nor the right, neither leaning forward nor backward. Be sure your ears are on a plane with your shoulders and that your nose is in line with your navel. Place your tongue against the front roof of your mouth with teeth and lips both shut. Your eyes should always remain open and you should breathe gently through your nose. Once you have adjusted your posture, take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Rock your body right and left and settle into a steady, immobile sitting position. And here's the best line in the whole thing. Think of non-thinking. Think of not thinking. How do you think of not thinking? Non-thinking. This in itself is the essential art of Zazen. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of repose and bliss, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. Traps and snares can never reach it. Once its heart is grasped, you are like the dragon when he gains the water, like the tiger when he enters the mountain, where you must know that just there, in Zazen, the right Dharma is manifesting itself, and that from the first dullness and distraction are struck aside. Pretty rudimentary instructions. So, I'm going to finish this here, but if we can do this simple thing over and over again, and this is the part that really touched me, in the face of all the moods and experiences that move through our lives, that move through me, while going through heartbreak, loss, fear, anxiety, regret, anticipation, depression. If we can sit ever so still, like this, like a mountain, no matter what, even when we want to run away, with intention and attention and determination, we may experience a profound shift in how we see our lives. So I'd just like to leave you with this few little reminders. Recall those basic and essential instructions for sitting Zazen. They're important enough for Maizumi Roshi to write 37 pages about them. Review them carefully. Observe yourself and how you sit. Adjust your seat, your posture, your eyes, your hands, your back accordingly. Put your entire attention into this form without any thought about it, without any need for it to mean anything, and without any expectations of anything happening whatsoever. Feel your body, be in it. Sit as utterly still, awake, aware, and relaxed as you can. And keep coming back to just this. It's enough. It's really enough. It's plenty. Over and over and over again.